Hi, I'm Ryan Davis,
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
and this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
Hey, Kiernan.
Hello, Ryan. Ryan, I'm getting that sort of tinny. It's not, I feel like you're not on your road podcaster, which means, ironically, to the name road podcaster for the mic, you must be on the road.
I am on the road. I'm in sunny Rio de Janeiro.
Oh, this is your major fact-finding trip. This is going to be a whole series on the podcast.
Oh, yeah. It is quite the city, Kiernan. It's a big one. And well, yeah, I got here a few days ago, and we've just been, dipping our toes in the Rio water. But there's a lot to see, and definitely going to have an episode or two out of this.
And this is like you're on a 2-week sojourn here, right? So where are you hitting besides Rio?
A week in Rio and a week in Sao Paulo.
Excellent. Any day trips?
Going to the sort of winter castle outside of Rio, which will be interesting to see. But really kind of mostly focused on the city since I've never been here before. I like to land and expand.
Oh God, is that something you're trying to make happen? Land and expand? That sounds like you land and then eat too much.
Well, that is definitely I'm off the shot. So I'm
Are you off the shot?
Oh yeah, I decided not to travel with it, so I could have a couple weeks, put on a few pounds, and
Are you
enjoy
able
life.
to do that? You can yo-yo in and out of it.
Oh yeah, you can yo-yo. It's a yo-yo kind of thing.
So you must be loading up, and you said the prices are very good. So, I hope you come
Oh my
back 20
gosh,
pounds heavier.
we had a Italian dinner last night, and it was shockingly affordable. I thought I was robbing them when we were leaving the place.
I mean, Rio's a destination for sure. So I'm a little surprised by that. But I was telling you, I remember when Catherine and I went to Poland and Ukraine, and I couldn't believe the prices. It was like, boy, I should have lived here for a few years.
I'm getting the Rio bug. There's no doubt about it.
That actually sounds like it might be an actual bug that you've contracted.
Yeah. No, that's what they make antibiotics for.
You're more likely to get that in the United States these days. And right, I guess I should check in. There was that major earthquake, just about a 2-hour trip away from you. But did you actually feel that?
I did feel that. It was right in the morning, and I was getting up to begin my wonderful day of phone calls. Got a little shake. It was a big. I don't want to minimize it. I mean, it was a big disaster in other areas of Colombia, but Bogota was largely unscathed.
But it was big enough. Yeah, I texted you immediately to see if you were all right, and you showed me a picture of a bunch of people. Like people evacuated their offices and homes.
Yeah, everybody went and evacuated. You're supposed to go out. I had calls, so I didn't have that luxury.
No, you were taking it from the high rise. I assume you were in a WeWork.
No, I was home. I was at home. Yeah.
All right. Well, I assume proof of life for Judy. That's she needs to know. I assume you weren't in touch to let her know you were safe. So for Ryan's mom, Ryan is good, and he's in Rio eating well.
Mom gets the international bad news channel, so she knew about that earthquake pretty much.
I should really just loop her in when I text you to see if you're okay.
Exactly.
Well, I don't have plans as big as Rio, Ryan, but we are doing another trip with the kids this coming week. I'm off to Chicago next week, and this is a trip that it was inspired. Sometimes you read a travel article that just gets in your head and won't let go. I remember years ago for me, that was this New York Times article about Myanmar, and I said to Catherine, we just have to get to Myanmar, which you can't go to now, but back then you could. And it had just opened to Western tourism. It was an awesome trip. We did Myanmar and Vietnam in this huge trip. And this one's closer to home, but 2 years ago, Bon Appetit magazine did this food journalism about what's called Harbor Country in Michigan, which is this series of towns that line Lake Michigan. And apparently for Chicago, this is kind of the place. It's like an hour and a half, 2 hours away drive from Chicago. And this is where you go to have a little time on the beach. And it just sounded so relaxing and laid back. So we waited for late August, figuring, a ton of the country's back in school before Labor Day. In the East, in New England, we're not in school till Labor Day. And so we're heading for a few days in Chicago, hit up a bunch of the kid attractions there, a couple museums I haven't been to, visiting some friends there. I've never been to the Museum of Science and Industry, which I have very high hopes for and have heard good things about.
You're a science and industry guy.
I'm well known as that, and that's the tattoos I have on my chest, and it's what I call my past science and industry. And then we're grabbing a car and we're going north for a few days. So the names of these towns that make up Harbor Country, in case you're not familiar with it, because I had never heard of this, which is why it was like so in my head. Grand Beach, New Buffalo, Union Pier, Lakeside, Harbert, Sawyer, and Three Oaks. These towns are all right next to each other and create a string of these like quaint, cool, and apparently very foodie towns. So we'll be checking those out. We got a little cottage. We'll be spending days on the beach. And the thing that I think excited me the most about this, Ryan, was I'm looking at the map and I'm going, oh my God, there's a national park right on the way. Indiana Dunes National Park, which is it's not like one of the blockbuster parks, but it preserves these dunes right on the lake shore. And we're definitely going to be popping in there. And as I was researching what we can do, there's plenty of hikes and just, you can go out and hike the dunes and spend time on the shore. But there's also some cultural preservation here. They have a few homes that they've preserved that were built for the 1933 World's Fair. You and I love old World's Fair attractions. And they've got this place called the House of Tomorrow. So this was people in the 1930s picturing what the House of Tomorrow would look like. And my favorite part about it is that they thought in the future, these optimists for the World Fair, they built a car garage, but they also included an airplane hangar for your little plane. They thought every family will have their little plane. We'll pull out of our hangar, take off on our streets. They weren't quite thinking flying cars yet, so they have this little airplane hangar. And I'm really looking forward to checking out this House of Tomorrow at Indiana Dunes National Park.
That sounds fantastic. They didn't imagine the just the smart refrigerator.
No, exactly. They just went straight for planes. But for me, hitting a new national park, this is like Christmas.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Well, we look forward to hearing about this trip.
Well, I'll tell you too. So, with the kids, we tend to do, instead of hotels, we're tending to do Airbnbs because you get more room, you get a kitchen. You
get the kids their own Airbnb, or are you guys like?
Oh, I wish. No. So I've been shopping around Airbnbs, and the truth is sky high rates in Chicago on these weekends. And so for the second weekend, I said to Catherine, we've already done a bunch of Chicago ourselves. We'll have been there for a few days already. Maybe we want to check out some like second city or something outside of these seashore towns. And so we may. I don't want to get hopes up too high here, but we might might spend 2 nights in Milwaukee. Which I'm addicted to these like less touristed towns, and Milwaukee looks like they have a great beer scene. They've got a couple of art galleries and museums, and I think
cheeseburgers.
They sure do. And have you been to Milwaukee?
I've been to Milwaukee. Absolutely.
Was it for campaigns or why were you there?
I was out there for a colleague's wedding.
Oh, all right. Anyone I know?
Pariser, yeah.
Oh wow, that was in Milwaukee. Boy, he's not a Milwaukee boy.
It was in Madison, but we made a weekend.
Sure. Oh yeah, you got to do Madison. We have friends in Madison, so we're going to do a different trip there. I looked there too. Let me tell you, by the way, last tip before we get to our topic, which I haven't even mentioned yet. I was looking at Airbnb. Price is super high. I looked at VRBO and I was like, oh, these prices are like quite good. Only to realize Airbnb is showing full transparency on the total price, including all fees, which I appreciate. VRBO, Hand to God, the price doubles when you put the full fees in. It's such bullshit. That is such a horrible way to trick people into trying to book these things. I don't know why any platform would do it, but it's really made an enemy out of me.
I always feel like there just isn't much there when I've looked at VRBO before.
No, I just don't. To me, it's like such blatant trickery. I just
Yeah.
like I admire that Airbnb is just being straightforward with what it is. And I really, that just really turned me off. I tend not to book VRBO, but occasionally you do get a fine there, and especially if you're looking for like a nicer place, they do tend to have slightly more luxury places or like well-designed artistic places on VRBO. But I don't know, they're losing me.
Well, I'm in my Airbnb here in Rio, and full price transparency, no issue.
I like to hear. And did you use Airbnb truly?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, Ryan, this episode is, we got to get into it. So this is, several listeners have emailed in and asked, where's this episode we were promised? This is, we're going to be revisiting London. We have a bunch of London episodes in the can. I lived in London over a decade ago. But I love London. I've spent a lot of time there. But this was a unique take on London because I went with my mom, which was a great and interesting experience. I really loved revisiting some of the old classics. And then I checked out a couple of brand new spots, particularly the V&A, the Victoria and Albert Museum, has a new outlet in East London called the Storehouse. That's a totally new concept for a museum. It's like letting you inside the warehouse where they store the back catalog, and it was so amazing. So we're going to cover sort of the classics of London, what it's like to revisit them, talk a little bit about theater, a very little bit. I know our audience doesn't love theater, and then we'll wrap up by visiting the new V&A.
All right. Well, I think it's time for us to take off because this is going to be a meaty episode.
Tell the cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
All right, Ryan. So I want to lead here by asking, when was the last time you were in London? I feel like it was a long time ago.
I feel like it was a long time ago, too. Probably, certainly pre-pandemic times.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
So really a different scene. I think that was my last visit was probably, gosh, I maybe 2014, 2015 before this. So it had been a while. And the background to this trip was my parents, they'd never gotten their passports. And when I lived there, they had intentions to come over and visit. But that was the year that my dad's dementia really got out of hand and he declined. He's since passed away. But it's always hung out there as this kind of dream to go back with my mom and let that visit really like take hold and let's do it. And it's definitely a message I'd love to get out to everybody out there that if you have one of those ambitious trips that you want to do with your family, with a loved one, or a broader family like a Disney trip with all your brothers and sisters in there, one of these trips, it's one of those things that you're always going to put off. And my message to you is plan it, do it. We're in the summer of 2026. Start talking about the summer of 2027, because to get these schedules aligned and to book the amount of places you need, you just have to pull the trigger and do it. And I really appreciate Catherine was the one who pushed me to do it. And, it's the trip of a lifetime. And my mom and I still talk about it nearly every time we talk. And so happily, we did get to go there. One quick tip was similarly, I was looking for an Airbnb because I wanted to have separate bedrooms and a kitchen and a living room and all that. And what I found was a lot of corporate housing, which, are made for like week, 2 week, up to like 6 month long stays. They will do listings on Airbnb. And so I actually discovered this place on Airbnb platform. I had a question about it, so I emailed the platform directly, and they gave me a better price. They get the corporate housing place gave me a better price because they don't have to pay all the extra fees. So it was nice
Don't
to
give
have
them away here on the podcast.
I'm not giving them away. I'm not going to say who it was. But it was near Holborn, if you know London fairly well, because I wanted to be kind of in the meat of it all. And it was a great choice. A great little apartment. It's typical corporate housing. It's not like it's not warm and artistic, but it is very comfortable, very professional, nice, crisp, clean sheets.
Good wife.
and very, very good Wi-Fi. And so we spent a lot of our time revisiting sort of the classic places, which we don't have to dig into. We have past episodes on these, and some digging in super deeply. We've done like first trip to London, that kind of stuff. But just to quickly hit where we went, I was trying to weigh what is going to be too much physical strain for my mom. What can we pack in during this week without it being totally exhausting and like losing our memories because we weren't, we were rushing. So I definitely kept back. But once I saw my mom, man, she can keep pace. So I was like, all right, we're going to like pack this itinerary a little more than I expected. So when we first got there, first day, you have to get through that whole day of jet lag. So we hit the Natural History Museum and the Victoria and Albert Museum. One of the great parts of visiting London is a ton of the museums are free. So you can pop in for just 2 hours and feel like you're making good use of it. So we headed to I also thought Natural History and V&A, these are kind of blockbustery sort of museums. You don't have to go deep into reading every placard, and you just get to go and admire nature and dinosaur skeletons and beautiful minerals. And in the case of the V&A, decorative arts and a lot of plaster casts of famous statues. They have a plaster reproduction of the David, which is incredible because it's absolutely huge, and just a huge eclectic display of everything from medieval tapestries through to Roman artifacts to Islamic rugs. I mean, it's just like it's kind of a fun house of art, and that's what we needed on that jet lag day.
That sounds like a pretty busy jet lag day.
It was busy. In fact, I dragged us to St. Paul's that night. I was hoping to do Evensong, which I always recommend, and that's very relaxing. They didn't have Evensong during that night, so we did go back to St. Paul's, and instead of doing the full kind of historic tour of the place, we just sat and relaxed and listened to Evensong service, and that was very nice. And of course, just for the biggest hits again, if you're planning this trip, if it's your first time in London, the must-dos. We hit the British Museum, which was much more during the summer season, was much harder to get into than I had recalled. There was an enormous line that wrapped around the sidewalks. I mean, halfway around the museum. It moved, but the security has definitely been bumped up there from when I lived there. Westminster Abbey,
probably because of the French heist.
That is interesting. Certainly that could be a reason. Yeah. I mean, I also think it was like peak tourist season. British Museum, Westminster Abbey, definitely book that in advance because, I mean, of all the tickets in town, that's really the hottest. It's very packed. And that was one where I loved the Rick Steves guidebook because it does lead you through the greatest hits. They also have a great, map that gives you some additional context there. But you are kind of there's not actually conveyor belts, but you are in like a steady moving line of tourists there. We did a Parliament tour, which are available during the summer. Highly recommend. Super historic, very laid back. It's not an intense tour, and it's like visiting the Senate or the House of Representatives. You get to learn a bit about the British government. You get some sense of the great long history, how Parliament works with the royalty, all of that great history.
Were you worried they were going to grab you out and make you prime minister, like right there? Like, how do you?
I mean, that? I was hoping. I was certainly. I had a tux in the car just in case. We did do a double-decker bus ride, not because it was necessary to get around, but just because you got to do that when you're in London. It's a quick hit, and it's a fun way to see the city. It costs what, £2. And we did really rely, we could have used taxis around town, but honestly, the tube and the bus system are so good that it saves you money and it's the fastest way to get around. So I was so impressed. I love going to cities that have great public transport that makes it just so easy to move around.
Stand clear of those closing doors.
I think that's New York that says that. Oh, yeah. Mind the gap.
Mind the gap.
Mind
the gap. Yeah.
My favorite. I remember the very first time I visited London. One of the end stations on one of the lines that you get when you come in. from the airport is the last stop is Cockfosters, and to an American, I mean just Cockfosters. They say at every single stop, "This is the Cockfosters." Did the Tower of London. I was a little nervous about that one because those tickets run out really fast, but we were lucky and managed to get in. Go absolutely first thing in the morning. Tower of London might actually be worth a separate episode just about the Tower of London because uh, the amount of history there is very interesting. Too much for this one episode, but
Haven't we been trying? Haven't we been trying for years to get like the guy who has like
yes,
the eagle or whatever?
the Raven Master. You're talking about the
Raven.
Raven Master. I've been trying to get the Raven Master who oversees this flock of ravens who have all this myth around them who live on the grounds of Tower of London, and he's like one of those rare people who doesn't even answer. I'm like, your book isn't that big, like we'd have a good audience for you. I'm still after the Raven Master. But the Tower of London was really fun. That eats up half a day easy because there's so much to see there, and it's cool. They're doing like modern art exhibitions next to the great history. And it is a royal palace. It's also the famous prison. Lots of famous beheadings there. And you can easily visit Tower Bridge when you're right there, which is the famous bridge that everyone thinks is London Bridge with the giant towers on it. We did the changing of the guards. No matter how much I forewarned Mom, don't expect the castle to look like a medieval castle. It kind of looks like a corporate executive office, Buckingham Palace. It's still, I feel like people go with these expectations of towers and, Hogwarts. It's not that. And the changing of the guards itself, boy, oh boy, does that get packed. It had been, it had been a long, long time since I'd been to visit that. And it's like it's really hard to get a decent viewpoint. So bring binoculars. Plan on if you really want to see it well, you got to be there at least an hour beforehand, and then you're just kind of standing around. I don't think it's a must do if I'm being honest. And then the final kind of must do beyond food markets and maybe I'll touch on food very briefly, but I think one must do, and it's a little more obscure, is the John Soane Museum. Got to book it ahead. And this is a house museum of a collector of art and antiquities. He was a professor who just amassed this enormous collection, converted his house into a museum, and it is one of the must-see spots. Every inch of it is packed with cool cool Roman pottery and pillars that were taken from archaeological sites and statues and paintings. It's just one of those houses that completely surrounds you in artistic goodies, and you just sit back and take it in, as opposed to again reading every little placard. It's kind of the experience.
I actually went here on your advice a few years ago, and it is quite the place.
Oh, it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. If you missed that, I think you really have to go back to London. A couple other like semi-obscure spots. People know to go to Covent Garden for shopping. It's become a little touristy, honestly. It's still pretty pleasant though. It's got a nice like plaza that you can walk in. You can get lunch there. But there's a shop that I love that actually dates back to 1856. It's called Benjamin Pollock's Toy Shop. This is where Mom and I popped in to get some souvenirs for the grandkids. And what they specialize in is paper theaters, which are, light cardboard reproductions of theatrical sets, and even come with little figures so you can play out little plays, musicals, fairy tales. And they're super detailed, beautifully painted and crafted and cut. And they do historic ones. They do up-to-date ones. You should check out their Instagram and online presence. Benjamin Pollock's Toy Shop. They do great little pop-up cards. And, we got the kids these little paper models of double-decker buses and things. But they're not like cheap tchotchke sort of things. They're really finely crafted paper art.
I love these. I wound up on on the Wikipedia that's got a list of notable people who have dabbled in toy theater, and it's quite the list.
I mean, I just think it's a very interesting souvenir, and it's a great way to preserve these works of art that are created for theater. And then, the scenery and the costume is torn down, but these paper theaters can let you take it home. And one thing that I love, because this shop goes back, over 100 years, many famous people have visited it. And the author, Robert Louis Stevenson, has a quote about Pollock's. He says, "If you love art, folly, or the bright eyes of children, speed to Pollock's." And I share that sentiment.
Yeah, he's on this list of notable people who've dabbled in toy theater. So that's
Well, there you go. Um, Now, mom is a big musical fan, as I am. And I had thought, okay, this is how we'll plan our evenings. And it's always hard. Like, sometimes if you want to do a real food focused trip, you got to set the nights aside for nice dinners. But we said, let's focus on theater. And I thought maybe one or two shows would be enough for our week there. But then I realized, and I think you know this, Ryan, especially the Times has done some reporting on this recently. Theater in London is still much more affordable than Broadway tickets. I mean, Broadway tickets have gotten to $300 for a ticket and up. I mean, really just insanity. Where I'm thinking of when you and I lived in New York. I mean, you used to be able to get a quick ticket for theater. Sometimes it was $85 or $100, which seemed I mean, it was expensive, but it was a full night of entertainment.
Like a $60 ticket back then.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so what's nice is, you can, but definitely try to book these things before you go, but you can grab last minute tickets. And I ended up grabbing some additional tickets while we were there because it just seemed, it fills your entire evening. You don't go out to a big dinner. You just grab something quick before. And we went to 3 shows that are just perfect London shows to see. The first is there's a fantastic production of Oliver. The best. I can't think that there will be a better Oliver during our lifetimes.
Semi-immersive production, right?
No, it's not an immersive production. No. This is just a great classic, big, splashy, nice sets, good costumes, talented kids, great dancing. I mean, it's just a real old school, feel good musical comedy. And this is actually the second time I've seen Oliver in London. The first time, Mr. Bean was playing Fagin, which was very special. But this production, the latest production, is even better, even though it doesn't star Mr. Bean. The second one we saw was Six, which have you seen Six?
No, but this is about the wives, right?
Yeah, this is the wives of Henry VIII. Again, just a great thing to see in London. They have New York production now too. Super talented. One thing to say for this is it's only an hour and a half show, so you're in and out, and it's a super energetic pump up show. It seems to me that it has a little bit more cachet in England, and you have a lot of mothers, grandmothers, daughters going because it's a real girl power themed musical. And it seems like that's caught on and become a little more culturally relevant than I've seen it here in the United States. But as a result, you just have these people who know every song by heart and who are cheering like you're at a pop concert.
That's fun.
And that's sort of the theme. They're kind of in the styles of like a Britney or Christina Aguilera, these classic pop stars. And so that gives a very fun upbeat, but there's also a lot of history involved in it. So you learn a lot about all the 6 wives. And I would say listen to the music beforehand to see if you're going to enjoy it, because it's definitely a particular style. And if you don't love musical theater, it might not be the show for you. And the final one is this real popsicle sticks and tape kind of production that it's just well written and it's pure fun. It's maybe a little bit of a letdown if you've taken in Oliver, and there's clearly a lot of money behind that production. But I think the story here is interesting and the acting is good and the songs they're disposable, but they're fun. It's called Operation Mincemeat, which is based on a book. I'm sure I've talked about it over the years, but it's about this plot to trick the Nazis into vacating a particular area that the Allies wanted to attack in a very complicated scheme. And it's all the British spies, which are sort of these gentlemen spies. And it's fun. And the name of the actual operation was Operation Mincemeat.
And this is also in New York, I think, too, right?
Yes, just in the past year it came to New York, so you can see it there. But I love seeing real British shows in Britain.
Of course.
I know Mom really liked the British tradition that at intermission you need to get a little cup of ice cream. In fact, nowadays you can book your tickets ahead and include the ice cream, and I think you get a pound off or something like that. That's a great tradition. I think the Broadway should adopt a little hit of ice cream right in the middle of the show is very pleasant.
Absolutely.
And the very first time I went to a show in London, a British couple next to me recognized me as an American when I said, "Oh, sorry," when I was climbing into my seat. And they bought me an ice cream and they said, "You can't go to a show in Britain without having an ice cream at intermission." Isn't that the sweetest thing? That happened like 14 years ago, and I'm still thinking about it.
That is adorable.
Actually, even more than that. I mean, that's like 17 years ago. It was amazing. What an act of kindness from a stranger. Now, Ryan, the last two places that I want to dig a little deeper in, and I know you've been to one of these. I had this tremendous gap in my visitation of London. And again, I lived there for a year and I didn't get to this place. And I had visited 5 or 6 times for work and other various reasons. The Churchill War Rooms. And deep listeners of Out of Office, I mean, you probably shared this story 6 years ago, but maybe you can give just a quick bit of your history with the Churchill War Rooms and what happened when you tried to visit.
Yeah, famously, I went to the Churchill War Rooms. They were sold out. They wouldn't let me in. But I figured out that if you became a member of the group of museums, like the War Society or whatever, you could enter whenever you wanted. So I came back later that day as a member, and the guy gave me some guff. But I got in.
It was a great hack, but it also highlights a very important point, which is if you want to visit these rooms, capacity is very limited because it's a closed underground space. You have to book it ahead of time. And I don't know if that hack still exists. It probably does to become a member, but you'll pay a little bit more. So just do your organization and book it ahead of time. Don't hesitate. And I would say this is an essential place to visit. I remember why I didn't go when I lived there, which I heard that it had mannequins. And for some reason, that just, mannequins. I just pictured like Disney animatronic Churchill. And I was like, I don't want to do this.
And it's not the vibe.
No, not at all. That was such a misunderstanding of how good this place is. So these are the underground rooms right in the government center that were the nerve center of British military operations during World War II. And the reason it's underground is because this is essentially a bunker while the city was being bombed by Germany. And this is where Churchill, he didn't spend tons of nights down there. He would go home, but this is where Churchill lived and breathed and took in information and made hard decisions. And it is weirdly well preserved. I mean, essentially in 1945, they locked the door and it stayed that way for a long time before they converted it into a tourist attraction. And today you get to walk through the communications rooms, the map room, the sleeping quarters, there was like a pool for the secretaries at that time. And you can really envision how bleak the situation seemed. There's a terrific audio guide that leads you through, so you can go through at your own pace. And great use of sound effects and narration to bring to life how hard and basically impossible the circumstances felt. And you had people living down there for weeks and weeks on end, just in total fear that the city was being decimated above them.
Yeah, it's really incredible, and like you said, shockingly well preserved. You feel like you're very in the moment when you're down there.
And Ryan, you made a great suggestion, which was that Mom and I should watch The Darkest Hour before we go. Terrific suggestion. It's a interesting and good movie, and also it just shows you the stakes, and it actually takes you into the war rooms in that movie. So watch it on the plane ride over. You'll feel really ready to immerse yourself because you'll already have a lot of the emotion of the story in your head.
That's definitely a great one to see. I actually just watched a new World War II drama last week called Pressure um, about the weather report leading up to D-Day,
Mm.
which surprisingly exciting.
Wow,
Um,
interesting. Okay, I'll look
yeah,
for that. That's a good hit. The
you
the final tip I want to get through here is make sure you leave yourself. If you're a museum person, you're interested in Churchill, I would suggest at least an hour for the museum room that ends the war room. So you sort of leave the preserved war rooms, and then there is this beautiful museum exhibit with objects and takes you through the full biography of Churchill from when he was a boy straight through to his death, and a lot of preserved wardrobe and awards that he had. Really breaks down
some
this.
paintings,
What's that?
some paintings.
There's some paintings and a lot of photographs and a lot of
Yeah,
memories preserved about him, and it takes you through. He's not just the wartime here. He had a super interesting stint in the military where he was a prisoner of war and he escaped, and he had this upper class British upbringing that is interesting, and it sort of shows you what shaped him into the leader that he was, and then also how his ambitions were thwarted to continue to be in power, and he was voted out of office, which is kind of astounding given what he accomplished. But a real character, I love Theodore Roosevelt. He's a historic character in that kind of same mold of just larger than life.
absolutely.
So the final place that I want to talk about, and which I would say, if you have time, this does require about a half day, because you got to go out to East London, the area that was really revived around the 2012 Olympics in East London, was given a new life, and they extended the tube out there. And so it's easy to get to, but it does take a little while, and you have about a 20-minute walk from the tube to this museum. But the V&A has opened up two new museums out in East London. They're about a 15-minute walk between them. The V&A East, which is going to be it is like a much more contemporary museum. So it's trying to highlight culturally relevant moments now. That was not yet open, but the V&A East Storehouse was. And this is essentially the warehouse that the V&A, they used to keep it in West London in this old, it was like a retired post office actually that they used as an archive, completely closed. And what they did was they said, we have so many treasures that are sitting on shelves, they're preserved. Why don't we build a warehouse with a tourist infrastructure in the middle so that you can actually see museum employees at work pulling the archives, doing research, doing repairs, but also you can just browse the shelves. And they have this awesome app that lets you explore the archives on your own. And it is absolutely gorgeous architecture, where it's like this metal and glass almost cage that rises in the middle, and to your left and to your right and above you and below you, you can see just endless shelves all around you packed with artifacts that, I mean, you look one way and it's antique vases, you look another way and it's tribal masks, and it's historic furniture, and it's suits of armor, and it's stained glass. And what I like is each of in the main area, they have these kind of end caps on each of the shelving units where they have brought together objects from across time and across cultures that you can look at and compare and discuss with whoever you're visiting with. And you can really see how they're curating these mini exhibits from these objects that otherwise would have just been boxed and covered and stored away from the public. It really is like no museum I've ever seen before.
That is so cool. I love that.
And it's proven extremely popular. They thought in their first year they would get 250,000 visitors, and they got 660,000 visitors. So definitely book your tickets ahead of time, especially if you're going during heavy tourist season. And the final tip here is if you're passionate about one of the 400,000 objects they have there, they have a service called Order an Object. And this is where you can actually pick, say you love Byzantine art. You can pick and say, I request to get a private room where I can look at and possibly even handle a religious artifact that they will actually take out from the archives and deliver to that room for you to have some time with one-on-one. It's quite amazing.
That is funny, actually. That's interesting.
So that, that was what I liked about this, was that it kind of mixed the old and the new, the classic must hit stuff with some new stops within London. And I have to say, the V&A East Storehouse and the Churchill War Rooms they just brought anew to me. No matter how many times I had visited, there's always more to discover in London.
Well, that was quite a trip.
It was great. I'm anxious to get back, and Mom and I are even talking about maybe an Ireland trip next year. We'll see.
Well, that would be my mom wants to do an Ireland trip one day too, another Ireland trip.
Oh,
So that would
maybe
be
we could get a van, the four of us.
definitely. Well, Kiernan, I think we're getting close to that Cockfosters. It's time for the last stop.
That's good. The last stop, Cockfosters.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
All right, Ryan, we're here in the last stop. This is the last segment of the show, the final segment of the show. It's my favorite segment. It's your favorite segment, and it's popularly known as the people segment because it's where we come together as a community to share. Mostly you and I share. We each bring one thing. It could be anything. It could be a piece of gear, it could be a memory, a trip we're planning, or a trip we just came on. It could be a dream, could be an article, could be a poem, anything, as long as it checks one box. It must inspire the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week. So, Ryan, I'm going to ask you, as I ask you every episode, do you have a last stop this week?
I do have a last stop this week, Kiernan. You and I are huge fans of LIDAR, the cool technology that is letting archaeologists look under the ground without having to dig. And there was a really fun interview on History Unplugged with a historian who's been doing a lot of work with LIDAR. And just a super cool update about all the kind of new things we've discovered in the last 10 to 15 years about human civilization. And, not only in South America, but also in Europe and Turkey, all over the world. We are finding out that civilization is even more complicated than we thought. And I just thought it was a super cool interview, and dropping it here in the show notes.
That's a great suggestion. And every year I just saw another one. I feel like once a year, the Times does some giant LIDAR exposition, some giant LIDAR spotlight where they talk about a brand new ancient city that's being discovered under the jungles, usually in South America.
Yeah, and it's the South America stuff is super cool, but beyond that, it's just being used all over the world.
Oh, I can't wait to listen.
Did you bring a last stop this week, Kiernan?
I did, Ryan. On the theme of national parks, I'm always looking out for national park news, and there was a bit of controversy over the past few weeks. Big Bend National Park in Texas, which I was surprised to learn that Texas does not actually have a lot of protected public lands, just for such a vast area. I honestly had just assumed. But Big Bend is really special for how much land it preserves there. And there was a bunch of construction going on inside it to secure the border. Though this is actually an area that sees very little traffic across the border. And I do think it was the power of social media showing the video of natural landscape just being bulldozed, literally being bulldozed, birds flying, animals fleeing this area. And this is a special preserved public land there that Texans feel very passionate about. And it actually, people rose up on the left, on the right. People just said, do we really need to be doing this in this national park? And it seemed the plan, as of this recording, the construction has been paused to investigate. Does this actually need to happen? And it seems like instead of building an actual barrier, they might put a wall with some technology to do surveillance, which I do think for preserving nature is a better way to monitor this area. And it was nice to see, people take notice. The national parks are one of our greatest treasures, and I think it's really important that we keep our eye on these things because once it's gone, it takes centuries to bring it back.
Yeah, well, I don't want to get too political.
No,
But
I think I did a pretty good job of not being political
yeah,
there.
you did good.
And
You
again,
did
I want to
good.
say this was very bipartisan. People rising up. I mean, people, Texas has a lot of Republicans and Democrats, and people were really coming together. And conservation is a place that I think really both sides care a lot about.
Absolutely, especially these national treasures. Well, Kiernan, until next time, I'm Ryan Davis,
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
and this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken. As you said, Ryan, I was thinking of the T-shirt. Big fans of LIDAR.